Hey, good evening. I'm the instructor. I'm Dr. Bounds. I want to say a few things about this week and kind of the assignments this week and clear away any misunderstandings about the class and what's expected of you each week. And you know that last week, our first week, we really didn't do much. We had everyone introduce themselves on the discussion board, and we looked over the syllabus. But now we're in week 2, and we do have one assignment due this week, right? And I did receive a couple of emails, kind of people wondering what they needed to do. And as a general rule, if you need to, if you're confused about what we're talking about and what week we're in, what readings to do, go to the syllabus each week and look at the schedule toward the bottom of the syllabus, and it'll tell you, what week we're in, what you need to read. That's really important. Go ahead and start doing those readings. Look over the PowerPoints for that week, and it'll also tell you, for example, in week 2, we have a quiz, right? So if you get confused, send me an email. If you get behind or something, I would like everyone to, finish assignments on time. But if you miss one for some reason, send me an email. I'll open up that assignment for you, and I won't count off for it being late or anything like that. Try not to do that every week, right? Please don't, abuse my kindness. But if it happens every once in a while, it won't be a problem, right? All right. I guess that's everything I kind of had to say about what we're doing this week. If you look at the syllabus, you will know that there are really 3 readings this week, right? And they're not real long, right? So don't freak out about there being 3. Most of them are really short, right? So this week, we're going to cover the structure and relevance of theory in criminology. That's the reading that I'm going to talk about right now in this video. And then I'll probably post another one later tonight on social disorganization. And I want you to know that I'm going to try to keep these videos to a minimum, right? I don't think you want to watch, 2 hour and 15-minute videos every week. And I don't want to, make those videos. But I think it is important that we have some videos, and because it is kind of complicated material. It will help if you see me kind of try to explain and point out what's most important and maybe what's not so important, right? All right, so let's start talking about the structure and relevance of theory in criminology, right? So this article is written by Paternoster and Bachman, who are the editors of this book, but they also write some of the readings, but not all of the readings in this book. Most of the readings in this book are written by the actual theorists that came up with these theories, or researchers that have done a lot of research on testing this particular theory, right? So you're going to see those names, Paternoster and Bachman, over and over again, right? And you'll see that they wrote the first and the second article under week 2, right? And then we'll move on to the last one by Ralph Taylor, right? All right, so again, I'm going to talk about this one. I'm going to stop this video and then I'm going to film another one for social disorganization. Really, the reason why I'm going to do that is because I've already recorded this video twice, and I keep running out of video, out of memory, and it cuts off. And I think that's because my daughter's been playing with my tablet too much, right? And yeah, so hopefully that won't happen again. If it does, I hope that I won't lose a whole hour of video, but it'll be like 20 minutes of video, right? All right. So this article is not about a particular theory, although it mentions some theories and it uses them as examples. It really introduces a theoretical framework, right? A set of concepts that can be applied to every theory. And this framework comes from a fellow named Alvin Goldner. He's a famous sociological theorist. So they've taken this framework and all the concepts like articulated propositions, unarticulated policy implications, sentiment relevance, all those things. They've taken that from a sociologist that used them to explain, to analyze sociological theories, and now they're going to use them to analyze chronological theories. And it is very important that you learn all these concepts in this reading because they will appear over and over and over again as we apply them to each group of theories, right? So if you don't learn them now, you're going to be in trouble kind of every week, right? They're really useful, right? And so let me go to that PowerPoint, and it might help you if you look at this PowerPoint while I'm talking about it. Now, I'm not going to read every bullet point of every slide because I don't think I need to, and I don't think you want me to. It'd be a really long video, right? But I am going to really skip all the way to slide number 5. And that's where it presents all of these concepts. Some of them are already mentioned, right? And they're the concepts of Alvin Goldner's, right? So you see it says Alvin Goldner's framework on slide 5, right? And here's the really important ones. I'm going to list them all, and then I'm going to go through each one and define them and give you examples, right? Articulated propositions, cognitive or empirical validity. I kind of like empirical validity better than cognitive validity, but they're the same thing. Unarticulated propositions, right? So there are things that are stated, articulated, and things that are unstated, unarticulated propositions. Then there's the tacit implications for public policy, and then there's the sentiment relevance of a theory, right? So let's start with articulated propositions. Right? These are the things that appear in the book. They're stated. They're written, right? They're explicit, formal, written like they as opposed to unarticulated, they're easy to identify, right? The unarticulated, that's where you kind of got to read between the lines, right? But the articulated ones, like when we get to Sutherland's differential association, he has 9 propositions, right? They can be listed on one page, and that's articulated propositions. Now, not all theories are like that. Sometimes you kind of have to read hundreds of pages, perhaps, and try to figure out what are the most important things. But differential association makes it real easy. There's 9. Right? And he lists them 1, 2, 3, 9, and he put them in his book, right? And thank God Edwin Sutherland did that, and it makes it really easy to learn that theory, right? And so the way that all theories are is they have concepts, right? And there's a relationship between those concepts, right? And it explains why those concepts are related, right? For example, social disorganization. There is a relationship between population turnover, ethnic heterogeneity, and poverty, right? Those things create social disorganization, and social disorganization produces crime, right? And the worse those things are, the worse the social disorganization, the worse the crime is. That's the relationship between them, right? And it has an explanation why, right? All right. So I've already talked about articulated propositions. I already talked about unarticulated propositions. Let me talk about cognitive or empirical validity, right? Alvin Goldner talks about this as the truth element, right? Does the theory fit the facts, right? Does it explain what we see when we systematically observe the world, right? Does it portray the world accurately, right? And if it doesn't, it's not a good theory, right? In fact, all the theories that we're going to talk about, with maybe one or two exceptions, enjoy some empirical support, right? We find evidence that these theories explain and predict the world, right? There's one or two that don't, right? I can list a number of ones that don't, right? If you know anything about early criminological theory, there was this guy named Cesar Lombroso, and he had a theory that he called phrenology, and he thought that he could look at the physical characteristics of people, like the bumps on their head and facial features and stuff like that, and he could determine whether they were going to be a criminal or not. And non-criminals didn't have those facial physical features, right? Now, I don't know what you think about that, but that sounds like a bunch of BS to me, right? And when people went out and tested it, it's like, criminals don't really have any physical characteristics that are different than law-abiding citizens, right? And that's why that theory is not taken seriously, right? There was another theory early in criminologists that argued that different types of criminals had different body types, right? This is like the work of the Glukes, Sheldon and Eleanor Gluck. And they argued there was really three body types, right? There's like endomorphs, ectomorphs, and mesomorphs. And these things predicted not only that they would be a criminal, but what type of criminal behavior. Well, people tested these ideas. They didn't find any support for them either, right? And so, that's two examples, like empirical validity, cognitive validity. It's not any. And the only reason why we talk about those theories is they're examples of failed theories that, they offered explanations, and those explanations did not fit the facts, and they did not predict the criminal behavior of those people into the future, right? Another example might be astrology or something like that, or can you read people's palms and tell if they're going to commit a crime or something like that, right? I haven't tested these ideas, but I don't expect them to enjoy much empirical validity, right? Now, most of these other theories have some empirical evidence that supports them. For some of them, it's like a little bit, some of them it's a lot, right? Some do better than others, have more empirical validity than others, right? All right, the next thing, and this is, the fourth thing on this list, is the tacit implications for public policy, right? The way that I explain this is, if you believe this theory is true, right, that their way of looking at the world and the concepts and how they're related to crime, if you believe that that's true, then what should we do about crime? And the we is mostly it's about what should the government do, but sometimes it's like, what should the community do? What should parents do, right, in order to reduce crime, right? If you believe that phrenology is correct, and to get into this, if you believe that the people who are criminal have unique physical characteristics, and a lot of these people believe that those characteristics were often like a caveman eyebrow and long arms and kind of ape-like physical characteristics, that they were not as evolved, right? And then you believe that those people shouldn't reproduce and transmit those characteristics through their genes to the next generation. Because that next generation, if they have those physical characteristics, if you believe in this theory, then they're going to become criminals too, right? That's the policy implications of that biological theory of phrenology, right? And those ideas, like, it had a big influence on like eugenics and things of that sort, right? But if you believe that social disorganization causes crime, then the tacit policy implications for that are like, there's three things that cause social disorganization: population turnover, in and out migration, ethnic heterogeneity, and poverty. So if you go to those neighborhoods, right, and through all sorts of different ways, get people not to move around so much, to stay put, right? And continue to live in their house for longer periods of time. And you do things to reduce poverty in those neighborhoods, right? Ethnic heterogeneity is like, I guess if you made them move to places that were all the same ethnicity, that would reduce crime. I don't know how ethical that would be. Not today. It'd probably be more ethical 100 years ago. But if you did those things, if you believe that social disorganization are true, those are the implications for public policy, right? If you believe, it mentions acorn psychic trauma. It's kind of this idea from psychology that if you're a criminal, it's probably because of some traumatic experience you had when you're a kid. If you believe that, then the implications are like, get people to stop mistreating kids when they're young. So maybe you'd fund like DHR and, prevent people and give people parenting classes, especially first-time parents, and, teach them how to correct the misbehavior without hitting people and stuff like that, right? And that should, and to the extent that it does reduce trauma, you'll see reductions in crime, if that theory is true, right? And so that's the implications for public policy. The last thing, and this is, I don't know, you might find this one kind of unusual, interesting idea, right? Is earlier I said that like empirical validity matters a lot, but it's not everything, right? There are some theories that will stick around a lot longer than you would expect, and some of them have relatively low amounts of evidence that they're true, that they explain the way the real world works. But because of sentimental reasons or sentiment relevance, they can live on, right? So it's not just cognitive validity or empirical validity. Theories do not live and die solely upon empirical support, right? If they're intuitively convincing, if they just seem like they make sense, right? And I kind of think deterrence theory is like this, People think that the way to reduce crime is to punish people and punish them severely, right? And, if that turns out that doesn't have much effect on them, a lot of times people are like, I don't care. Let's punish them anyway, right? Particularly a lot of people in the, police officers, judges feel this way, right? So even if they see support that like longer prison sentences do not further deter people from committing crime, and there's some evidence that makes them more likely to commit crime when they're released, they don't really find it persuasive. They don't really care, right? And that is sentiment relevance, right? Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with emotions and not intellect, right? And some of it has to do with morality too. Just like, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, and the good guys should do unpleasant stuff to the bad guys and stuff like that. And to hell with empirical evidence is what a lot of those people will say, right? All right, those are the major concepts, right? And so in this first reading, those things are applied to a number of different theories. They're applied to Agnew's general strain theory. It's this theory that it's different than Robert Merton's strain theory, if you've ever heard of that. It argues that people commit crime in response to strain. And people feel strain when unpleasant things are done to them, right? And so basically the way that Agnew's theory is if unpleasant things are done, right, to someone, if they take something that belongs to them, physical or, like their respect, non-physical, or if they threaten to take something from them, or if they, what Agnew calls the presentation of noxious stimuli, if unpleasant things are done to them. If someone hits you, someone molests you as a kid, those are all strain, forms of strain. If someone threatens to hit you, right? If someone takes something that belongs to you, whether it's, your car, your wallet, your wife, your girlfriend, or anything like that, people often, when they experience those strains, become angry. And as a result of that anger, they will become motivated to lash out at that person or someone else that's weaker, if they want to scapegoat someone and commit some crime against them, right? So that's Agnew's general strain theory, right? And that's kind of the articulated propositions of it, right? The unarticulated things it doesn't say is it doesn't, it doesn't mention any of the things that social disorganization believes important, right? It doesn't really highlight the importance of poverty or immigration or ethnic heterogeneity or anything like that. So by not mentioning those things, it's dismissing them, saying they're not important, right? And that, that's the unstated part of it, right? So the policy implications of that theory, the tacit policy implications, oh man, if we could reduce the amount of strain that people experience, that should reduce the amount of crime. So somehow figure out how to get people to be nicer to each other and stop, taking things, hitting each other, any of those forms of strain, abusing each other, molesting other people, raping other people, committing crime toward other people, then it'll be less likely that those people will respond by committing more crime, right? That, those are the tacit policy implications. If you believe the theory is true, then here's what we should do in order to reduce crime, right? All right. That's everything. That's really everything that's important, all right? I mean, there's some good ideas in there as it kind of steps you through all those things, but really what you need to know are those 5 concepts, and they're all on chapter 5. Now, don't just look at slide number 5 and don't read anything, because there's a lot of important stuff in there, right? And I guess I feel I should say something about this, right? I don't mind doing these videos, but these videos are not a substitution for reading, and I don't mind providing these PowerPoint slides, but they're not really a substitution for reading either, right? Like they'll help, and if that's all you do is watch these videos and look over the slides, that's better than doing nothing. But it's hard for me to imagine that someone can get an A and not read the chapters, right? And certainly I didn't design the class with that in mind, right? But, you do whatever you want to do, right? It's your grade, and I want your grade to be as high as possible, but, you might be content with something less than an A. I don't know. And you might prove me wrong, be able to make an A without reading all the chapters and stuff, and more power to you if you can do that too, right? So I hope that you find these videos helpful, and I've already lasted 26 minutes, and I've got to make another video, so let me stop this one. I'll post another one, and it'll be just about social disorganization. All right.